Convergence 2014 in the keynote session. Thanks for coming out. Real excited about this opportunity, and had the chance to meet Vala about a year ago in Florida, and so excited that he took the time out to come here to Virginia and spend some time with us. But I wrote down a few things that I think are key and a reason why I'm so excited. And I wanted to share a few of those with you guys, so give me a second here. Recognized by Forbes as one of the industry leaders shaping CRM in the world's top 40 social marketing talents. Blue Focus Marketing named him 2012-2013 top 50 men in technology on Twitter. Author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. Good read, I would highly recommend it. I've got a copy here, and I'm sure Vala can point you to the nearest bookstore. He is a weekly columnist of the Huffington Post, for the Huffington Post. In 2014, Vala was recognized by Adweek as the most retweeted and mentioned marketing executive on Twitter. He's considered a pioneer in cloud computing, social collaboration, business intelligence, and customer relationship management. He's the CMO of Extreme Networks. I think he's shaping the future, and there's a lot of exciting things that are taking place. So please help me welcome Vala Afshar.
That's great. Wow. That was an awesome introduction. Well, my name is Vala Afshar. Hopefully you can all hear me. And this afternoon I'm going to talk to you a little bit about reinvention. The topic is how IT and marketing can better collaborate and work together and no longer adversaries. But it requires a bit of reinvention and different way of thinking in order to be able to be a successful technologist and a marketeer in today's era, in today's hyper-connected, social, mobile, cloud-driven, data-driven era. So many organizations and functions are ripe for disruption, but disruption starts at the individual. And so I wanted to share a little bit of a story about individual reinvention and disruption. So I wanted to share with you at the beginning of this a little bit of story about my career. I went to college and studied electrical engineering for undergrad, EE, and then EE for grad school. So I joined our company as a software developer, and I spent the first 10 years of my career. So this was 18 years ago. 18 years ago, I joined the company, and I'm writing code and I'm testing products and solutions in a lab environment, you know, my entire 10-year career. I then transitioned into customer service and support. I started to work really closely with our services organization to improve the way we test products. Didn't like the fact when customers and partners would call us and report software hardware issues. So worked really rigorously to determine how do we create better testing process. And I felt if I got closer to where the work is being done, where products are being installed and used, we could improve our testing criteria. So after 10 years, I was running global test, software hardware quality assurance for a company. And in 2004, the company asked me to run worldwide service and support. So all our call centers, professional services, educational services. And for the first time, I moved closer to the customer. So instead of being in R&D labs with hardware and software developers, writing code, testing code, you know, using my EE degree, I started to converse with customers and partners and better understand how people were using our products and solutions. And I did that from 2004 up to last year. So I've only been in marketing for 1 year. And this is the journey of how do you go from an engineer to services professional to marketing. So in 2010, I had zero digital footprint. No Twitter, no LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Google+, nothing. You know, if you Googled my work, you wouldn't find anything prior to 2011. So one day I get an email from Twitter, and this is in 2011, and it says, "Welcome to Twitter." And it has my face And my bio, it wasn't an egghead, it actually had a picture. By the way, if you're on Twitter, please don't have an egghead. Nobody follows an egghead. And you actually can go, it's twitterid.com, and put your alias, and it tells you when you joined. So I was number 259,725. So, that intro made me sound like a pioneer, and in fact, you probably used the word pioneer and all that stuff. That's not a pioneer. There's 259 million people joined before I did. And so I'm about to draft a note to Twitter letting them know that I didn't create this account, that I'm being spammed. And now I realize they wouldn't care, but back then I thought they would do something. And before I craft the email, the CIO of our company comes in the room, pulls me out of a meeting and says, I created an account for you on Twitter. He didn't even ask me. But good intention, so a good life lesson. He did the right thing, changed my life and my career. And what was happening is in 2010, we started using social networking inside our business using our CRM solution from Salesforce.com. In 2010, they had introduced this thing called Chatter, which was like Facebook for the enterprise, something like Yammer, or if you're using enterprise collaboration. And I was using Chatter pretty heavily inside of our business. So I would read about, I had several hundred people that worked for me at that time, and literally the business and leadership part of my work interests me more than the technology side, to be honest with you. So when I would learn something about how to delight customers, and of course at the time we were doing fantastic building a world-class service and support organization. So I had a lot of content that I would share internally. So the CIO brings up a dashboard and he says, look, we've been tracking all the employees and how they use social networking inside of Extreme, and we noticed that half the company's following you. And I remember distinctly, he said, I don't even find you interesting. So, so not only he created an account for me without asking, he's not really doing a good job selling it. But there's another life lesson there, that the reason I wasn't using public social networks is I subconsciously didn't think I had anything interesting to say. But it turns out if you're interested enough, over time you become interesting, or at least there's a perception that you have interesting work. So I would share things that I found interest in. I would read a Harvard Business Review post on disruption in customer service and support, and I would share it with my team. Every time I have staff meetings, it was almost a lunch and learn session. I would never have a staff meeting without sharing some piece of nugget, some news, something interesting that I read about technology or company and so on and so forth. But what he reminded me is that all this sharing that I was doing was inside our company. It wasn't leaving the walls of Extreme. He said, Vala, it's only 140 characters. You don't have to really write an essay. You find something interesting, pop the link in there, put a comment or two, and post it. I'm thinking it's Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Twitter, give me a break. What is this? It's not business. And then he shows me, look at all the customers of ours that are on Twitter. Look at all the analysts that are on Twitter. Look at all the publications that you read. Every one of them are on Twitter. So I committed to use this tool for 30 days. I told him I will give it a shot. Your argument is sound and logical. So about 10 days into it, I read a Fast Company post by Tom Peters. Tom Peters wrote the book In Search of Excellence, 1983, talking about business leadership and best practice. And I read and worked in some of my graduate studies, reading and researching Tom Peters and other Michael Porter, Clay Christensen, some of the other who are considered like gurus in the management space. Anyway, I write a tweet, point to the Fast Company, and I tag his Twitter alias @Tom Peters. He responded. And I grew up in Boston, so people think like Larry Bird and Bobby Orr, those are my heroes. No, like Tom Peters is someone who I looked up to. My parents are my heroes, but these are folks that I would try to learn from. So I couldn't understand how someone who I considered maybe one of the top living management experts in the world is conversing with me on Twitter. Blew my mind. So I'm hooked 2 weeks into it. So I start curating content. I start following Gartner, IDC, Forrester, and all of the analyst communities and folks that were shaping CRM to a point now that Forbes thinks I'm one of the pioneers. Well, for 10 years, I was following CRM technology because I was running global service and support. And when I started joining Twitter, I started following all the analysts that were truly shaping the CRM space. And it turns out that some of these analysts would converse back and forth with me. And it turns out some of the work that we were doing with like predictive analytics and understanding customer temperature before they even contact us, some of the work we were doing at Extreme was leading edge. And so the analysts started to really take interest in terms of the work we were doing. Well, it turns out that a publisher reached out to me because at the time I'm tweeting about how our company was named the 4th best place to work in Boston by the Boston Globe out of 1,600 companies. And I would tweet that, success factors, culture, people, process, lastly, technology. You want to be a successful company, stop focusing on technology, focus on your culture, focus on your people. And I would, like simple definitions, because you can only put in 140 characters. My definition of culture is what happens when a manager leaves the room. Processes need to be lean. Well, in the absence of authority, are you doing the right thing? And then that's what I feel is good culture. My definition of brand, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? If they're saying good things, well, then you have a good personal brand, good company brand. If they're not saying good things, you need to work on it. But you got to be in the room listening to understand it. You got to be part of the conversation. And you have to view feedback as a gift. So these are the things I was writing, and a publisher reached out and said, look, your company's doing well, you're growing, you've got a great net promoter score. If you're familiar with net promoter, we have an 81 net promoter score, which means it's a great measure of customer loyalty. And so they convinced me to write a book. Now, beginning of the story, I'm a double E, and I don't want to generalize, but writing was difficult. That wasn't my strength. If it was math formulas and other things, or writing code, I'd be more comfortable. It was my sweet spot. But writing, not so much. But another life lesson, unless you intentionally struggle, you're not going to grow. And I realized very early on that if you're not helpful, you're not influential. And curating content is very helpful. When you find Gartner trends, CIO trends, and you share across social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be, your internal enterprise, that's how you can build your circle and strengthen your circle of influence when you're helpful. But creating content really takes you to another level. Think about the last time you had a PowerPoint presentation and you gave it to your group. Let's say you're a director, manager, VP. Did that intellectual property, did that go anywhere else outside your meeting? When was the last time you wrote a blog or an article? Have you considered writing a book? Do you orchestrate or sponsor lunch and learn sessions? When was the last time your customer learned something new from you, or your employees or your peers? That's the power of collaboration. And I believe, given the disruption that exists in business today, if you don't have that open collaborative mindset, you're not going to survive. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So, wrote the book, and when I wrote the book, I remember the first person that asked me to write a blog was the CIO. The same CIO that created my Twitter account said, I have a blog site. You keep curating content. Why don't you guest blog for me? So my first blog I ever wrote was in 2012, and I was a guest blog on my CIO's blog page. The book came out, and the book did okay. It did actually pretty good. And then some of these publications started reaching out to me and asked if I would write 500 to 1,000 words on their site. Well, last year I wrote about 200 blogs for the Huffington Post alone. So I write 1 or 2 blog posts a week now. And so just as I go through this, please, just a reminder, I was running a call center in 2011. So I would argue that the work that you're doing is far more impactful, considered more sexy, collaborating with unbelievable customers and partners in technology. So I started with a 0 digital footprint managing a call center. And today I'm the CMO of a $600 million company. But that's the journey. It was sharing, connecting, collaborating, and writing content. So the writing content was exciting because as I would create content, more unbelievable folks like Tom Peters and Steve Case, Mark Andreessen, just unbelievable technologists would connect on Twitter. And I would find I'm having conversation with these venture capitalists, CMOs, CIOs of Fortune 1000 companies. So I went to my CIO and I said, I'm running out of things to talk about. How do I take advantage of this incredibly generous Twitter network and come up with ways to develop content? He said, have you heard of Google Plus? I'm like, you mean the free? So I had heard of Google Plus. I didn't know much about Twitter and anything else, but I did know about Google Plus. He said, you send a link on Google, you create a Gmail account, send a link, and you can have a high definition video session with someone, and you can record it. It can be live. It's free. So why don't you use Google Plus and invite some of these influential people that are on your network and talk to them for 30 minutes and then watch the video and write a blog. I'm like, that's fair. So a year ago, I started this video conversation every Friday at 3 p.m. I figured Friday means East Coast guys are available. It's lunchtime for West Coast. And And my first guest was Guy Kawasaki, who's original evangelist at Apple. He's written multiple best-selling books. Just happened to know him on Twitter and invited him. He said yes, another life lesson. When you don't ask, the answer is no. So I never thought he'd say yes. He said yes. And that was my first guest. Every Friday since then, so I've done 80 some odd shows, every Friday from 3 to 3:45, I speak to some of the most incredible people in the world. These are some of the example companies that have had their CXOs, the CIOs, CMOs, CDOs, or CEOs, like Aaron Levy of Box, he's a CEO. And what happens is these folks, it could be Jonathan Becker, CMO of SAP, Kim Stevenson, CIO of Intel. Her IT budget is like 3x our company revenue. Guy Kawasaki, and so on and so forth. They come on the show using a free tool. We have a conversation. Then on weekends, I review the video and I write a Huffington Post blog. And I've had 3-star generals on the show. I've had Emmy Awards winners on the show. I've had best-selling authors on the show. So another life lesson, these folks that are volunteering their time on social networks are inherently smart and generous. So just think about your own network. Wouldn't it be amazing if you have incredible people that are shaping the world and they're teaching you or you're teaching them? How easy is it for you to use a free tool? And it doesn't matter if you're in K-12, in higher ed, in healthcare, whatever industry you're in. If you are working with smart people, how incredible an opportunity for you to capture that intellect and share it across your network. And that's how you build influence. So one of the other things, which is, by the way, another life lesson, was having a reverse mentoring mindset, where you have a beginner's mindset. It's open, it's free of prejudice, it's curious. Last year, exactly a year ago, I think it was October last year, I gave a presentation at my staff that talked about technology trends that will impact every business. I call them mega trends and statistics impacting every business: cloud, mobile, social, big data, and apps. This year I'll add Internet of Things and wearables to that, because I think that's an absolutely disruptive technology that will impact every business. So this student co-op comes to me after the session and says, Vala, do you mind putting your presentation on SlideShare? I didn't know what SlideShare was. I don't know how many of you guys know what SlideShare is. Do you know what SlideShare is? Does anybody know SlideShare? Okay, cool, about a quarter of the room. SlideShare is another social network where you post your PowerPoint presentations, and you can post it by category, and people will follow you, and they can download the presentations, they can embed the presentations on their websites, and you get unbelievable like-minded professionals who post things about IT best practices, software-defined networking, Wave 211 AC, digital marketing, regardless of the topic. There are hundreds of professionally done PowerPoint presentations by some of the smartest people in the world posted on SlideShare. LinkedIn bought SlideShare, realizing how incredibly important this network was. So normally I would do a presentation, it would sit on my laptop, it would go to minus infinity, nobody else would ever see it again. This 22-year-old introduced me to social network, and as the CMO, it's a co-op. I could have easily said, yeah, let's set up a time with my admin, let's talk about it. Instead, I said, show it to me. How does this work? Because I'm only going to save this on my laptop. It's not going to go anywhere. Well, that first SlideShare that I posted has 345,000 views. It's been downloaded tens of thousands of times and over 1,000 websites now have that embedded PowerPoint. Since last October, I've posted about 10 or 11 PowerPoint presentations on SlideShare, and the slide needs to be updated. 1.2 million views of these slides. And all they are the slides that I normally would show at my staff meetings. So I ask you, you are architecting the future of your enterprise. You're going through a digital transformation. You have these amazing best practices. You capture that on PowerPoint. Where does that go? Is it ready for, I'm in a place where there could be a lot of sensitive data. I realize that some of the clients here, you can't share any of that information. But let's say you're in healthcare, higher ed, K-12, or you have a presentation that just speaks to industry trends, not specifically your company. Big takeaway, please look at SlideShare, because now I have thousands of people following my work on SlideShare. How does that translate to extreme networks? Well, my last SlideShare, which I posted last week, Thursday, so it's not even a week yet. 15 use cases of Google Glass in healthcare. I polled my CIO friends on Twitter, asked, can you give me case studies of Google Glass and healthcare? I have several thousand CIOs that follow me, and so immediately I had 15 case studies. So I created 15 slides, posted on SlideShare. It has over 10,000 views in less than a week. And now I have all these healthcare providers around the world asking me, can you introduce me to these CIOs who are actually using Google Glass in hospitals? And so it's pretty amazing. It's just posting a PowerPoint on a free social network. Google Plus is just a free video conferencing. You send somebody a link, they connect, and you have a high definition video. Twitter, free tool, 140 characters. That's how I have moved myself from running a service center to last year where our company was looking for a CMO. Our CEO decided that you need to move from services into marketing, because whether it's a book or SlideShares or a weekly podcast, our marketing organization can potentially benefit from some of this work. So that's, and the result of that, somebody, as part of the intro, yes, because of content, and it's multimedia content, video and SlideShares, an independent company earlier this year looked at hundreds of thousands of activity across social, looking for which account is mentioned most. And this guy at Extreme Networks is top of that list. And I don't understand how that happens, but I'm telling you that it's simply, when you work on something that's interesting, find a platform where you can share it with others. And none of this would have been possible if there wasn't a CIO in my company that was courageous enough to create an account, show me how to blog, show me a video platform. All of this was enabled by technology. But it's not technology that connects us, it's ideas. All of us have access to all of these tools. Some of us just don't feel like using them, and that's okay. But I believe that becoming a collaborative individual not only helps you professionally, I have learned more in the last 3 years than maybe the last 10. So I have this personal learning network that includes folks like Kim Stevenson at Intel, or Aaron Levy, CEO of Box, or analyst at Gartner and Forrester, and so on and so forth. And today, if you wanted to talk with me, I have an admin, so you have to go through the admin, and she has to schedule an appointment, and sometimes you make it through, sometimes you don't. You send me a message on Twitter or LinkedIn, chances are you're going to hear from me within an hour or two, or 24 hours. There is no filter there, especially if the intent is positive, especially if you're not at first contact trying to sell me something. See, this is another lesson learned with social. Don't sell anything. Just add value. It was Gary Vaynerchuk who says, you use the formula of give, 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 give. After maybe the seventh give, you've maybe earned the right to ask. So it's that unselfish motivation. So again, difference between inspiration and manipulation is intent. People that are social savvy individuals can smell hard sell or wrong intent very quickly. And that's a lesson that I'm trying to cultivate, not only within myself, but within our marketing organization. So that's the journey. And you may think, well, you're in marketing and marketeers are generally social. One of the things that I write on an annual basis is I look at the most social CIOs in the world. Because typically when people think of IT, they don't, whether it's directors in IT or managers or CIOs, they think, well, they're the laggards. They're not going to be on Twitter and LinkedIn and social. That's marketing. That's sales. And that's wrong. I'll give you an example. Based on my research, I published earlier this year, in March this year, the top 100 most active social CIOs in the world. Most, if not all of these CIOs report to the highest level in their organization. So they report to presidents of the university or the CEOs of the enterprise. On average, these CIOs have about 3,300 followers. This was back then, so their networks have grown. They've been listed a couple of hundred times. So these are the top 100, but they've been cultivating and building their networks for many months, many years. And when you look at some of the Twitter IDs of these folks, almost half of these folks joined before I did. So IT leaders, digital savvy IT leaders, are social by nature because they have access to real-time information. They're building strong networks. They're building influence inside their organization and outside. And it doesn't have to be Twitter, but any platform that connects you to like-minded individuals. And part of this mobile social cloud megatrends that impact every business is creating an experience economy. It's not a mobile economy, app-driven, cloud, data. It's really experience economy, and people are sharing their experiences, and that word of mouth is influencing. The number one use of web, and this happened, I believe, November of 2013, is now social networking. Social networking. We were just talking about students and how hyper-connected they are. The average college student in the US checks their mobile device 200 times a day, every 4 minutes or so. If they have no access or restriction, there's actually a term for it, FOMO, fear of missing out. How subconsciously distracted they are if they're not able to use their devices. The average college student in the US has 4 IP connected on their campus. These are the future IT professionals. That's why I talk about, college and university, because they're carrying a laptop, they're carrying a tablet, a gaming device, and a smartphone. Gaming device and smartphone. Now, that's before the Fitbit, that's before the Google Glass, that's before the Apple Watch. So fast forward 4 or 5 years, you're going to have 7, 8 IP connected devices per student. So that high density Wi-Fi environment and analytics is going to absolutely drive the experience economy. And what I say about experience economy, my wife works at Harvard University. Undergrad tuition, I think, is about $61,000. The goal of a digital savvy CIO in education, higher ed specifically, is student retention, student acquisition, fundraising, innovation in the classroom. They're not talking about speeds and feeds, because if they do, and if they're focused on help desk versus improving the experience of faculty administration and growing the business and growing revenue, they will not be able to have a seat at the strategic table. They will not have a voice in the institution. So I don't want you to focus necessarily on the stats, but we all in this room, you're technologists. We all understand that, we all now carry a computer with us. And at Extreme, for example, every customer-facing employee has 3 mobile devices. They all have tablets, mobile, smart devices, and laptops. I haven't had a desktop in 3.5, 4 years. I am 100% mobile. And again, I believe I'm a laggard. So companies have to focus on mobile if they can. And I know there are certain institutions that may have restrictions in terms of how quickly they can adopt mobile. But, it's frightening, it's not frightening, but a yucky statistic, there are more mobile devices than toothbrushes on Earth. And this year, mobile phones surpassed the number of people on Earth. So over 7 billion mobile devices. Only 2 billion of that is smart devices. So about 35% penetration. But Ericsson and Forrester and others project, just because of the declining cost of phones and data plans and so on and so forth, 85% of the population will have a smart device by 2020. So 85% of the population will have a computer that they're carrying with them. And social, again, and this is not necessarily about mobile, about Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. Whatever collaboration tools you use inside of your business is critically important in terms of adoption to gain and sustain relevance. And again, the future of IT professionals, marketing, or any line of business is going to be folks that are, I consider myself a digital immigrant. I have an 11-year-old daughter that goes to a public school. All her assignments is in the cloud. They've got Chromebooks that they've handed, going through an adaptive learning process. Last night, I had a video recording of her English teacher scoring her paper, and he appended video sound bites throughout, and she would click through the paper, and every time there was a deduction in score, there was an audio of why she lost 2 points here, 5 points there, so on and so forth, in a public school. And as a parent, we now follow the logic. It's unbelievable, the disruption that's happening, or adoption of technology in K-12 level. So, this is an infographic that was produced this year. It just looks at, every 1 minute on the internet, 277,000 tweets, and how many photos are shared on WhatsApp, and so on and so forth. So if you're ignoring social, I just wanted to show you, just in terms of population. If you look at population by association, you now have Facebook, number 1 in the world. Almost 1.4 billion active users on Facebook alone. China is 1.35 billion. India is 1.2 billion. Some of these you may not even know, and they're social networks. Twitter will hit 300 million shortly, but all of these social networks by population are moving up in terms of community of active users. So again, I think it was Clay Christensen, Harvard business professor, that said, you may hate gravity, but gravity doesn't care. Well, replace gravity with mobile, social, cloud, data, and you'll have the same sentiment. Cloud is another disruptive play. I'm not going to spend too much time in this in the interest of time, but even a company like Extreme that builds on-premise data center and wireless solutions and LAN campus, we have about 40 enterprise applications that run in the cloud. In 2003, I brought Salesforce.com, a true multi-tenant SaaS CRM solution, into our business. Imagine the spirited conversations 11 years ago that I had saying I want our most sensitive company data, our customer data, to be in this thing called cloud. Because Excel sheets isn't how we're going to run our global services with 12,000 active customers. We have to use a more robust solution with better reporting and so on and so forth. Apps is incredibly important. The internet is being unbundled with apps. Every company will eventually have an app store. Every company, every business. Extreme just introduced their app. It turns out that on smart devices, if you measure time on smart device, tablet or phone, nearly 90% of the time on a device, smart device is an app. It's only 10% on browser. So people aren't going to www.extreme.com. They want an Extreme Networks app where we can push information like battle cards, customer case studies, promotions, and so on and so forth. So it's critically important. Now, Gartner believes this is a $77 billion business, 268 billion downloads a year, 280 by 2017. But what's most interesting is Gartner believes in 3 years that the average person will access 100 unique apps a day. 100 unique apps a day. So again, part of the wearables and sensors and all of this technology will expand app usage. So think about your company's technology roadmap, your marketing roadmaps, and think about how IT can help partner and help you develop apps, because that's absolutely the future in terms of communicating with your stakeholders. And big data, most companies, including Extreme, can do much better job just with the little data that we have. And so big data can seem very scary. But the fact of the matter is, if you recently read a Wall Street Journal post, every 10 minutes in 2014, every 10 minutes, we produce as much data from beginning of mankind to 2003. Every 10 minutes. There were more photos posted last year than entire humanity, just last year. So as far as, and a lot of this data is unstructured. It's on social networks. It's not nice human capital management, ERP, CRM data. It's 90% of the data is unstructured. So you have to have advanced capabilities and tools. So you hear these terms like data scientists. McKinsey says in the US alone, by 2020, there'll be nearly 190,000 shortages of data scientists in the enterprise. It's one of the hottest fields that you can pursue. Yeah, I just read a recent post that says, a data scientist with some amount of field experience can demand up to $300,000 salary. So it's just an incredible amount. Now, as a marketeer, I do appreciate we have lots of this data, but we don't have insights. And it should be data insight that leads to rapid decisions and actions and value to your customer, and then rinse and repeat. So as someone who ran a transactional global customer service and support, we worked really hard. There was a ton of rigor for us to leverage data to delight our customers. And we did use predictive analytics. We used regression algorithms to determine how to improve our service and support. IT is at the center of this. There is no better time ever, in my opinion, than now for folks in IT to be true heroes in the business. But you have to not default to no. You have to have an open mindset. You have to really collaborate. And if you're viewed as a help desk function, it's a slow death spiral that you're on. And I don't want to be over dramatic, but I'm going to jump into quickly what I mean by that. So Gartner talks about a third platform, how the companies that are going to grow in the next 10 years are the ones that are focused on mobile, cloud, social analytics, and mobility solutions. They call it the third platform. Very interesting. All this information is publicly available. So I encourage you, when I show you IDC and Gartner, you don't have to think that, well, if I'm not a client of Gartner, so I won't have access to this information. Every day, the top analyst organizations in the world are providing free reports and blogs and analyst insight on social media. I follow the top analysts in the world, and some of these analysts, I'm a customer, so if I want to have a one-day consulting session, it may cost me up to $14,000 for 1 day of consulting. But it turns out that person I invite to consult with me every day is putting stuff on social media for free, which is amazing. That's one of the power, that's why I call it the personal learning network. In 2014, there was a survey of just leaders in IT, CIOs, but it applies to directors and managers. But this focus was buying power in IT. And they made a distinction between digital CIOs and traditional CIOs. And the distinction with traditional CIO was if the CIO was spending 70, 80% of the time with help desk-like functions, they didn't have mobile projects, they didn't have social projects, they didn't have responsibility for the web experience, they weren't developing apps, they had no big data responsibility because the enterprise hired a chief digital officer, which by the way is the fastest rising C-suite, and that person is taking a lot of technology initiatives and championing. And so there is a transition in terms of moving mobile, social, cloud, big data, and application projects outside of IT with folks that have demonstrated that they're able to transform the business in terms of digital. As far as the business value, there's a vast difference between the salary of a CIO who has mobile, social, big data responsibilities at $249,000 average salary to $182,000 traditional CIO. And of course, this cascades down. So if your CIO is at 182, your network director, your manager, your IT staff are going to be lower than that. And more importantly is the organizational structure. Digital savvy CIOs are reporting directly to the CEO, whereas the traditional CIOs may be under a CFO or an operation, or in some instances even marketing. So it is important, and business starting to value IT leaders who are not only aware but championing transformation in business. Now, that same report looked at the agenda of the CIO, and analytics was number one. The business is hungry. So it's actually, this is Kim Stevenson saying it from Intel, and I love it. She says, at Intel, there are no IT projects. There are only business projects. That's how she secures her multi-billion-dollar annual IT budget. Every spend in IT maps to strategic business initiatives within Intel. Every single project. And so analytics is what they use, they being IT leaders, to map their investments strategy to technology investment and procurement strategy to business results, business outcomes. And again, in education, it could be student retention, acquisition, fundraising. It could be flipped classroom, massive open online courses, or whatever it may be. So the mandate in IT is changing, and the folks in IT are asked to move from back office more to the front office and closer to the customer. And one of the customers is the CMO. And there's a lot of, you just go look at any IDG publication, Network World, CIO.com, InfoWorld. Every day, literally every day, there are articles published talking about IT and marketing alignment. IT and marketing alignment. And the reason, and in fact, this recent Harvard Business Post talked about how IT is frustrated with marketing, marketing is frustrated with IT. Some of them, for example, shadow IT, you hear a lot of terms about pockets of IT where technology procurement and implementation is happening outside the purview of IT. Well, let me tell you, successful IT organizations, the one I speak to, they embrace shadow IT. All of them uniformly say, when we find instances where the business decided to adopt technology without consulting us, it's because we failed to deliver a service to them. So let us learn from that, and then perhaps bring that shadow IT capability and make it into a formal process and deliver the service that the line of business needs. So if control is an illusion. That's another life lesson. So when you see pockets of shadow IT and you want to shut it down and you're upset about it, that's not the mindset that's going to allow you to connect and collaborate with the line of business. So again, any of the major CIOs that I consider to be the best in the world, they consistently view shadow IT as an opportunity to improve core capabilities of IT. Now, why is marketing such a demanding customer of IT? Well, a report from Gartner in 2012 said by 2017, majority of tech spend is going to shift out of IT and into marketing. And that created a lot of controversy. A lot of controversy. Two schools of thought, that's nonsense. I'm actually, as a CMO, I believe it's nonsense because I can't be successful. Marketing today cannot be successful without IT. Impossible. Even if you put a technology, again, I'm a double E, I consider myself a technical CMO, I still cannot imagine being successful without IT support. Now, here's what Gartner believes are the success factors based on survey of 3,000 some odd marketeers. There's web design, there's social networking, online advertising, content curation management systems that are required. Every success factor that defined has a very important technology element at the core of it. In fact, in April, Gartner said that 10% of the enterprise revenue will go to marketing initiatives, 10%. So if you're a $600 million company, you're spending $60 million plus in marketing, and 3% of that is going to be digital marketing. Now, here's a survey from IDC, and regardless of whether you're below 1 billion or above 1 billion enterprise, uniformly, companies are looking to increase their spend in marketing. And vast majority of increase is in digital marketing, which is all fueled by technology. It turns out, based on IDC's finding, the number one customer of IT for the next several years is going to be marketing. Now, I look at my own technology budget, marketing budget at extreme. We went from single-digit technical spend in marketing 3 years ago. I would say next year, about 50% of my marketing spend is going to have a technology component. 50%, from about 8% 3 years ago to 50%. So my best friend is going to be IT, because we're going to be spending millions of dollars in terms of bolstering our brand and creating customer advocacy programs and so on and so forth, all fueled by technology. In fact, we're pretty much in line with, or maybe 1 year faster than IDC's projection of marketing program spend. They project in 2 years, 50 cents out of every dollar of program spend in marketing is going to have a technology element to it. That's why the number one consumer of IT will be the line of business represented by marketing. Not sales, not supply chain, not operations or finance or HR, but marketing. So when I talk about digital marketing, this is how IDC defines digital marketing. They break it up into various chunks of technology and innovation. But what's interesting is, and I'll skip through some of these, this talks about when you're hiring in marketing, who you're looking to hire, where are you spending your digital marketing spend and technology allocation. What's interesting is that there's so much spend in outside of line of business. The different line of business digital IQ is growing at such a rapid pace. There is a movement where enterprise is looking to bring a chief digital officer, someone outside of IT, typically working either in marketing or reporting directly to the CEO, that looks at the overall disruptive technologies that shape businesses. And when I say disruptive, a lot of times you hear the word disruptive. In fact, people use it so much, it's maybe not even disruptive anymore. The original S&P 500 list was produced, I believe, in 1957. At that time, the average age of a company on the S&P 500 was around 70 years. If you look at the S&P 500 list today, the average age of company that make up that list is 10 years. I was recently at a Google conference. They believe by the end of this decade, the average age of the largest 500 companies will be between 3 to 4 years, which means some of the largest companies in the world are not here today. How many of you guys are familiar with Alibaba? Alibaba, a company that went IPO about a month ago. As far as tech market cap, they're only behind Google and, Apple and Google. Apple and Google, a company most of us haven't heard of, they're number 3. Just think about it. Facebook is 10 years old. They have a larger market cap than IBM. Twitter is only 7 years old. Did I say Google? Facebook is 10 years old. They have a larger market cap. Google's 15 years old, or 16, 1998. But my point is there's massive, this was a Harvard Business Post, every 10 days, a company falls off the S&P 500 and a new one comes on, every 10 days. So you're never too big to fail, and you're never too small to succeed. So there is massive disruption that's taking place. Bain did a study that said 71% of businesses today will not be here in 10 years. 7 out of 10 businesses are not going to be here in 10 years. So as technologists, it's our job to be aware of disruption that's taking place, and some of that means you have to reinvent yourself, your organization, and your company. And so here's I'm keenly interested in the digital officer, because at first I thought, if CIOs and CMOs collaborate really well, you probably don't need this function. Then I started meeting and working with customers that are CDOs, and they have a lot of juice in the business. They are really, truly influencers. Some of the most extraordinary technologists that are absolutely moving the needle in business, they're not the folks in IT. There are digital officers that have come in and they're now building organizations that are outside of IT. So this is real in my view. I don't think it's a temporary function. A lot of discussions about how one of the benefits of IT and marketing is it's the only way you can leverage data. This is 100% true. We're trying to build predictive analytics in marketing, just like what my team did on the services side of the business. Extraordinarily difficult to do, because you have to have clean data, you have to have accurate processes. You have to have a data-driven mindset and culture. Most of this stuff is not technology barriers. They're cultural barriers and educational barriers and grit, because this is just tough work. But you do need to have a strong, sound technical background to be successful here. Now, Gartner created this, looks like a transit roadmap, like a train map of technology just in marketing. And they broke it into these major categories. I think there's 13, 14 categories of just technology in marketing. So then, this is 2014. Then IDC said, you know what? It's more than that. They actually came up with 78 categories of technology just for marketeers. And each category has several startups all the way to the Oracles and SAPs and Salesforce.coms of the world that provide solutions. You think a company like Salesforce, a $5 billion company, they've spent, $3.5, $4 billion on just marketing technology in the last 2 years. They bought ExactTarget, they bought Radian6, Buddy Media. So they're buying these companies and adding marketing muscle to the CRM solution set. And again, they're nowhere near size of some of the giants in this space. So 78 categories. Now, one of the top marketing technologists in the world, Scott Brinker, decided that he's going to actually look at the companies that make up these categories. And he just published a few months ago 1,000 companies that provide technology. 1,000 companies that provide technology solutions to marketeers. So when I say IT and marketing need to collaborate, how can someone with a marketing background be able to understand and truly define differentiation that exists in all these major categories based on all these number of players and really smartly make investments within the business? I know I can't do it without strong IT. Impossible. So if you don't have a good working relationship with your IT organization, or in IT you don't have a good working relationship with your marketing organization, you're falling behind. Because our competition isn't waiting. They're investing in best technology to be able to deliver the best possible value to customers and employees. So many analyst organizations are strongly urging IT and marketing to work together. And what does all that mean, work together? How many of you in IT go to the marketing weekly or monthly staff meetings? How many times do you invite marketeers to your staff meeting? It's not, collaboration isn't, collaboration is hard work, but it starts with 4 words. What do you think? When was the last time you engaged with somebody in a different line of business, even it doesn't have to be marketing, before you make a major investment and ask their input? Maybe it's HR, maybe it's sales, maybe it's engineering. So the mindset that collaborative individuals, leaders, lines of business, organizations must adopt is one that is interested first and open. So again, I keep mentioning Gartner and IDC because I believe they're the 2 largest analyst organizations shaping and trying to bring insight in terms of these disruptive trends. And what can IT do to help marketeers? Marketing is not just about PowerPoints and beautiful colors and easy messaging. And there's so much that's going into marketing today. When I was asked to be the CMO for Extreme, the first thing I did was I took my iPad and I looked at our website. And I'm like, what a crappy experience. It wasn't an adaptive design. It wasn't mobile. It wasn't, vertically oriented. So as I'm thumbing through, the pictures aren't fitting. It was a bad experience. So the first thing we did was to start and commission a web project that created a adaptive mobile website. And now we have I consider it a best-in-class web with analytics that tells us, and we can do A/B testing to know which pictures and messaging and content helps. It's actually becoming a lead generation source for us, as it should be. Your website is your #1 digital asset. And I'm telling you, if it takes more than a couple of seconds to load, you lost the customer. If it takes more than a few seconds to find content, you got to go through multiple clicks and it's not intuitive, you lost a customer or a prospect. Your website is your digital window to your store, and it has to be your best asset. The other thing is I realized we didn't have apps, we didn't have marketing automation, we didn't have social listening tools. We've just in the last 12 months invested 7-digit plus in technology and marketing. Remember what I said, definition of brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room? The web is the room. And everyone in this room is mobile and social. So my competitors are talking about Extreme, customers are talking about Extreme, prospects are talking about Extreme in an omni-channel world. They're not calling us, they're not emailing us, they're posting something on Facebook or LinkedIn and Twitter. You have to have the listening tools so that you can be part of the conversation. It's not being part of the conversation where you're engaging hard or you're trying to sell hard, but at least you have a good understanding of what the market's perception of you and your business and your. I was just talking to a good friend before we got on, and I told him just a little story. I'm a little bit embarrassed to talk about it because it's somewhat vanity, but I'm just going to say it because it's not being recorded. Yeah, sure. Last 10 times or so, when I'm going to a hotel, I land at the airport and I say, looking forward to staying at Marriott. And when I get there, I'm upgraded to the penthouse suite. Okay, so this never happened before. Never. I'm not a movie star, I'm not an NBA player, I'm not nobody. But for the last year or so, when I tweet I'm coming to a hotel, I've been a streak of automatically being upgraded to one of their finest suites. Word of mouth marketing, what happens when they upgrade me? I go to the top floor, literally penthouse suites, and I take a Vine 6-second video of the room, I post it on Instagram, I say, wow, what an awesome room, thank you Marriott, thank you Caesar, thank you Bally's, whatever it may be. A lot of conferences have been in Vegas, so as you can tell, on interop and this, that. Literally, they give me a key where elevator only, and look, top floor. I had a gym in one of my previous rooms, a gym in the room. So anyway, I'm paying $199, and looks like they're probably $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a night rooms. But I thanked them, and I have 45,000 people that follow me on Twitter, and they see it. Oh, nice view, great room. An unbelievable advocacy, word of mouth, just the power of social currency. Last week I flew to Hong Kong on Cathay Pacific. Never heard of Cathay Pacific before. We had a conference at Bali. It sounds exotic, but I was in a suit 3 days at a 100-degree humid island. Everybody's in bathing suits, and I'm in a suit, so it wasn't that exotic. But it was a beautiful place. Anyway, so fantastic, Cathay Pacific. Fantastic service on Cathay Pacific, I tweeted. So I was going from Newark to Hong Kong to Bali. In Newark, I tweeted, Cathay Pacific, fantastic. I get to Hong Kong after 16 hours, I have a 5-hour layaway. Then I get on Cathay Pacific to go to Bali. On my second leg, when I walk in, show my ticket, Mr. Vala, we have a little gift for you. When we take off, we'll deliver it. Okay. A tower of Godiva chocolate with a handwritten note that said, thank you for tweeting about us. They have me for life. Right now, if I'm going to Far East, I am going on Cathay Pacific, and I never even knew about them a week ago. A little gesture. This is, can you just raise your hand as high as you can? Can you do me a favor? Can you raise your hand as high as you can? Awesome. Can you raise it a little bit higher? Yeah. You see that? All of us raised it a little bit higher. So raise it as high. So this is what all social is about. I don't have time for it. I'm too busy. I'm not interested. I'm not interesting. You just have to stretch a little bit more, just a little bit more. Trust me, it's just a little bit more. And magical thing happens. Now, as a customer service and support person, I immediately went back to my team and said, next time somebody says something nice about Extreme, send a handwritten note. Maybe send a box of chocolate, depending on who they are. And that was a magical moment, and it wouldn't have happened if they weren't listening on social media. So you want to delight your customers? We live in a world where things are becoming commodity right in front of our eyes. And the only differentiation is that, I'm beginning to find the best marketing strategy may just be care more. Care more. Look at this conference. Look at how, I had Dennis, the president, come meet me and chase down, hi, how are you? Glad to be here. Every one of VIcom's employees, I believe everyone, because I think I met like 20 of them, have come and personally thanked me today. This doesn't happen. I speak at other partner conferences. They don't come and find and seek me out and thank me and make sure everything is okay. And, they care more. And you know what? Next time, if I have a privilege to be here, whether I'm speaking or not, I'm coming back because they care more. So anyway, the last part of this presentation is I'm adding and giving you a virtual introduction to some of what I consider to be extraordinary technologists who are unbelievably generous. Dr. David Bray is the CIO of FCC. When you connect with David Bray on Twitter, you could say, David, what do you think of this? And I bet you a lunch that David would respond to you in 24 hours. The CIO of the FCC is one of the most accessible IT leaders in the world. Who would have thought that? I'm blown away by Dr. David Bray's accessibility. He'll send you white papers, presentations. He might even invite you to an event. It's unbelievable how generous David Bray is. Kim Stevenson, she writes blogs, she does video blogs, she's on Twitter every day, she's on LinkedIn. One of the most extraordinary CIOs in the world, accessible to anyone who's interesting and authentic and can potentially add value to her network. Ramon Baez, CIO of HP. By the way, some of these folks we compete with at Extreme, but that's the other part. When you find people that are doing extraordinary work, connect with them and build your network. It's important, even if those are folks that you're competing with. He's extraordinary. Andy Carabut, the CIO of Dell, former CIO of Dell. Again, someone who we competed with, but I find that she's extraordinary. Mike Kale, Mike just moved to Amazon. When I met and did an interview with him, he was head of CIO of Netflix. Now he works for Marissa Mayer at Yahoo. Extraordinary CIO, always accessible. And it turns out that these folks at the C-level, when they're accessible, the directors and managers in the entire organization who are active on social are accessible. So leadership is example, and these folks are trailblazers, and they're carrying that entire organization with them. So you'll have access to this PowerPoint, and I wanted to just give some example people that, let's say you're not on a social network, and you're like, yeah, you know what, maybe this guy makes some sense, I'll connect. Rather than just start and go, well, who am I gonna follow? There's about 40, 50 folks here, and remember that I mentioned the CIO 100. You have an opportunity to connect with amazing individuals and learn from them. And they represent an entire cross industry, healthcare, retail, hospitality, manufacturing, automation, K-12, education. Here's the first chief digital officer in America was Perry Hewitt at Harvard, doing magical work for Harvard. Harvard is considered one of the most social, digital savvy institutions in the world. And that work is right here with Perry. She's on Twitter. You send a tweet to her, I guarantee you she responds and connects. And to me, that's magical, because this is an extraordinary person. This is a change agent working at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, and she wants to communicate with you, which is amazing to me. I'm baffled. And so on and so forth. So, I guess that's the last slide. Hopefully I have time for questions. If not, I thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you found some of this interesting to you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Vala. Very, very pleased to have you here with us. We really appreciate it. Very inspiring information.
Thank you.
Someone of my age, quite obviously, what I'm looking at is my 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old grandkids that are flipping through things that I can't even keep up with.
Those are the future leaders.
But that's the future leaders.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate you taking your time out of your heavy
Thank you
schedule.
very much.
But really, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask before we close down? Anybody?
Sorry, there's a lot of information. I
Perfect
apologize.
opportunity.
I'm available in the next couple of hours, so if you have any questions. By the way, if anybody's interested in the book, if you send me a tweet or give me a business card, I'll send you the book on me, so if you're interested.
The last thing I'd like to say is that everybody at VIcom, we really appreciate your attendance to our event. We feel like it's very successful. It's successful just if you go with one thing that you didn't come with, and you can put that application to use. I know that I've learned a great deal just within the past few hours, even just with talking with people out in the hallway. Sure. With just talking with this gentleman when we first arrived. But we really do appreciate your attendance, both as vendors, customers, future customers, and we quite obviously invite you all to stay. We've got customer appreciation next door, a few things to drink, a few things to eat, and hopefully a lot of socializing and tweeting him. We all tweet him at the same time.
We love Extreme.
We love Extreme.
All right. Oh, that would be that's a guaranteed book. That's a guaranteed book. I got to do some marketing. I got to do some.
Love Extreme. We really appreciate their support, putting everything together as well as everybody else, all the other companies. So basically, right now, before he steps down, I think we have a drawing. I think we do anyway. We don't have a drawing?
No, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow? He won't be here tomorrow. How can I have him draw the winning ticket if he's not
I can
here?
tweet you the number.
We'll take a picture and send it.
Okay, well, thank you very
No worries.
much. We
Thank you very much.
appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
and look forward to seeing everybody
Thank you.
next year.